This is the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast, where divorce coach Corey Shapiro helps you get creative and not reactive in your divorce. Tune in now to get the support you need to make it through this difficult time. Here's your divorce coach, Corey Shapiro.
Welcome to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. This is Corey Shapiro. I record this podcast out of my office in New York City. And if you haven't been to Rockefeller Center to check out the tree during the holiday time, it really puts you in a holiday spirit. It's so lovely to see such a giant tree, giant Christmas tree. Puts everyone in a good mood. Even jaded New Yorkers make the pilgrimage to check out the tree. Today's topic, we're dealing with something that is near and dear to most of people going through divorce, and that is custody issues. Even people who don't have a lot of money, who are otherwise just want to move on with their lives, will really go to town if something happens in their divorce that impacts negatively in their minds their child. So that's our topic today. In my day job, if you're wondering or you're new to this podcast, I'm a divorce attorney. I practice in New York City. I've been doing this about 20 years. I'm also an author of Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind, the same title as this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see right behind me, we just put up a bookcase and we have now the book, and we have those wise owls who've been moved to center stage. We're trying to be wise on this podcast. And what I've realized, I saw some patterns. I saw ways out to not be so reactive, but be a little bit more creative. But it's so hard to be creative. So hard to be creative when you're stressed, when you're angry, when you're anxious. And that's what this podcast is all about, to help you through a difficult divorce in a better way. All right, our quote this week, we're going to break down because it's a three-parter. It's from Wall Street journalist Jason Zweig, and he has this quote from his father. It's about making a living, but I want to think about it as giving information. Okay, so the first part of the quote goes like this. You lie to people who want to be lied to, and you'll get rich. All right, my reaction to that when I first read it, I was like, who wants to be lied to? Like, I don't want to lie to someone, and why would I want to be lied to? But then I thought about that Emperor Wears No Clothes story, and then I started thinking a lot of people maybe do want to be lied to. I'll give an example. Let's say you go to a consultation with, quote unquote, a heavy hitter, an aggressive attorney. They want to convince you that they can achieve your goals. So they may lie to you. And that's maybe what you want to hear. Now you're saying, oh, Corey, no one's going to do that. Well, I'm not so sure. For example, you might want to consider a situation where if you have, let's say, a custody situation and you work 80 hours a week, you're traveling all the time, but you want primary, and someone says, oh, yeah, don't worry, I can get you primary custody. Wouldn't you hire that person? But if they told you the truth, like, hey, you know what? That's going to be a challenge. It's a small minority chance that we have that you're going to get that, assuming the other parent has a more stable, more available schedule, everything else being equal. So yeah, maybe there's sometimes when people lie to, and there's people who really do that and they do very well. Okay. The second part of the quote is tell the truth to those who want the truth and you'll make a living. I think that's where I am, in the sense of I want to be real with clients. I want to be real with you. And the people who really get this are the people that settle their divorce with not much drama. They go to, collaborative divorce, to mediation. If they go to court, they accept. They're not challenging what the judge says. If they go to professionals, they accept. They don't really challenge. And if they do have a challenge, they might get a second opinion, and then it might end there. So that is, I think, for most people, We are accepting reality. And then the third one, part of the quote is, tell the truth to those who want to be lied to, and you'll go broke. So those are the attorneys who that, let's say that first example where that person wants primary, and you say to that person, listen, you can't get primary. You don't have the time. The other parent has all this time. You're all over the place. Even if you did have primary, you're probably going to have to outsource it to daycare or childcare or something. It's not going to be you. And the court rather have a parent raise a child versus a non-parent. If you said that to that person, then they're not going to retain you. They're not going to listen to you. And they're going to go to someone who feeds that fantasy they have with the hope, maybe a slim chance, that they're going to get their goal. So for all those optimistic people, those do-gooders, that's the problem. In my own practice, I do what's called going against attorney letters, where clients have these fantasy positions, and I just make the client, know in these letters, I write out very clearly their position, why I think their position is not well, and make them sign it. So there won't be any problems down the road if their position negatively impacts their case. So if you do have something like that, an attorney wants you to sign one of these, going against attorney letters, get a second opinion, because maybe your attorney feels so strongly about an issue. And if two attorneys feel so strongly about the issue, then that might give you some really good information. Okay, let's move to the question. And if you have a question for the podcast, you can submit it to question.gettingdivorced.org. Okay, our question is from Jacinta, and it goes like this. My custody trial is coming up in a few months. I spent over a year dealing with family court. What's my aim? A fair 50-50 split. But what about the children's father? He's aiming for primary custody. Our kids are only 3 and 8. The court has given the father extra time, mainly because he has deceived the court. He claims that I am a danger to our children and has reported me to Child Protective Services twice. The children's lawyer says they want a 50-50 split, but he's worried about these child protective reports. I want to reach a settlement. However, the father's not backing down. I'm worried about what lies ahead. But Cinta, first of all, I feel really bad for you to be subjected to any type of false allegations that rises to someone making a child protective service report. Being reported to Child Protective Services, or CPS, that's not comfortable. And since there was no findings, thankfully, it sounds like you still have a good footing to present your case with a neutral court. If something was found, then obviously the court might be really prejudiced by that finding by CPS. So sounds okay. What's unclear for a lot of people in these divorces, these high conflict divorces, false allegations are made. I know that's hard to hear. I know that's hard to understand that people do that, but it's not that hard to make a false allegation, unfortunately. So this is what I call the shock and awe approach. It's a very aggressive approach. This strain of the shock and awe approach done by the father is even more devious because he's making things up. It's not even based in reality. It's just total fabrication, total fiction. So I feel for you that you're going through this. The second thing you want to understand is that the court determines things based on the best interest of the child. And it will be helpful, especially with your attorney, to find out if there's any biases the judge has. Is the judge more conservative in their approach? Or are they more progressive? Do they just have a presumption of 50-50? Do they really get into the details? Do they even have trials? I know that might surprise you, but some judges might not even try a case. They really force you to settle, and the way they wear you down, if you're wondering how they wear you down, is they might just conference you for years. But if you actually have a trial, then you obviously have to put in some, solid information. And I want you to understand this concept of the difference between defending and counterpunching as it relates to a divorce context. Now, we all know in boxing, a defending, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm just putting my hands up. So if you're trying to punch me, I'm not trying to give you a clean shot. So yeah, that probably hurts getting hit like this with your guard up, but not as much as if someone has a clean shot, right? So I'm just defending. That's what I hear you're doing. You've been defending, but you also need to counterpunch. You need to throw something. You need to be a little bit more offensive. And one idea that you might want to consider is what I'm hearing. If he's making these false allegations to really gain an advantage in this custody case, you might want to consider bringing up this theme of interference. That's something you want to explore with your attorney. Interference. Now, what's interference? It's just like what he's doing. He's trying to gain an advantage in custody by devious ways, by making up things. And that in and of itself is a big no-no. Courts don't like it. It's almost like lying to court. It's almost like you're coming to court with unclean hands. Remember, custody is an equitable disposition by the court. So if you come to court with bad faith, with unclean hands, they're not going to really give you any equity. They're going to treat you poorly because that's what happens when people come to court with unclean hands, like little dirty hands. Oh, we're not going to deal with you. You are just a dirty litigant. You're unclean. You're bad faith. You're lying to the court. This is a court of equity. We're going to reward the person who's telling us the truth. Now, that's always the case, but that's generally the case when you're dealing with an equitable court and an equitable issue. So my coaching's corner for you is simple. I want you to think about this concept of a mental health professional. Some jurisdictions call this a forensic. It is someone that is appointed by the court. It's usually a mental health professional. Could be a social worker, but more often than not, it's a psychiatrist, psychologist, someone like that. And they will explore these issues. They will explore the issues the father, the court's going to appoint it for both of you. So you're going to have to get mental health evaluation. The father's going to have a mental health evaluation. You're going to both have to have it. And they're going to explore his issues in depth. They're going to explore your issues. Now you have the counterpunch. You have that interference. And that forensic is going to write a detailed report. And that report is going to be read by the court. And the rule of thumb, not in all cases, but the rule of thumb is 75% of the time, the judge is going to follow the forensic. And that might give you good information. So that's my little coaching corner for you. And I hope this information, which I know was a lot to digest, especially being through such a attack, by him. I know that was just a lot. So I really appreciate you submitting your question. And let that marinate. Think about it. Okay, as that is being digested by Jacinta, we have a topic next week, which is near and dear to my heart. It's about relocation. This is if you just want to move, start a new life, go somewhere different, but the only problem is the other parent is going to be far away. And that raises a whole host of issues. And we're going to talk about those issues in a very clear way on our next episode. All right. So I thank you all for tuning into the podcast. For all you deep divers and you want more information, until next time, check out our archive and standalone questions on our show's website, which you can find at gettingdivorced.org. If you're pressed for time, don't forget to look at our clips on YouTube. Also, as I mentioned, you can check out our new behind our new scenery and let me know what you think about that by sending feedback at gettingdivorced.org. This is Corey Shapiro. Looking forward to next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast with divorce coach Corey Shapiro. Divorce can be a difficult and overwhelming process, but it doesn't have to be. Corey's book, Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind, is here to help you gain clarity, composure, and a strategic mindset. Get it now as an ebook on Amazon or an audiobook on Audible, and unlock the power of these resources to make more informed decisions and gain better understanding of the process. This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.